Well, welcome again. We are happy for everyone joining us here in conversation. Tonight, we're going to be talking once again about where we're heading with a special focus today on the third word of our CARE acronym, which is renewal. As Virginia and I were talking the other day, it could stand for a number of things, but renewal is an important one and it captures a lot of different potential directions. For more background on what has brought us here, we invite you to review the videos from our last 3 Zoom conversations, and always invite ongoing conversation by email throughout the week.
All right, so tonight we're talking about renewal. And so the way I wanted to start is to see if I could get some thoughts from you for what do you associate with renewal. So if you want to unmute or maybe raise your hand, we could get you to give some ideas of what you think of with renewal. Not everyone.
I'm not sure how to raise my hand.
Gotcha. I see you. I hear you.
Okay. So many of you know that for years now I have done silent retreats at the beginning of Lent and Advent. And I mean, that's just a precious time of renewal for me to go and spend basically a week just in the company of 8 to 10 other women, but in basic silence for most of that time. So just that kind of silence and that kind of community is huge renewal for me.
Thank you, Mary Lou.
I want to give this a spoiler alert because I intended to finish with this, but I heard on the television this morning a man talking, he quoted Paul Tillich, "Suffering introduces you to yourself and reminds you that you're not the person you thought you were." Now that has a lot of resonance, I think, in our current situation, but this is 2 years ago today, I was in intensive care in a Canadian hospital. And that's been very much on my mind, thinking about that and thinking about how I struggle to sit up in that bed and look around at all the other people in there whose lives were on the verge of extinction. And the importance to me of understanding that I would never be the same again. And rather than thinking of my own mortality, thinking that that was probably going to be something positive. And I don't know where that came from, but I am deeply grateful for it. In other words, I was renewed by that exposure to the verge.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else want to say what they think of with renewal? Okay, so some of the things that come up, I think of rest, restore, retreat, Mary Lou said. And so I found something on the internet that I'm going to attempt to read to you that kind of separates the difference between rest and renewal. And it's just a couple paragraphs. So it says, rest is associated with a pause. The pause interrupts action in order to refresh the energy to continue and to pick up where you left off. Renewal, however, is not just a rest. Renewal is associated with a stop. Stopping is not just pausing. Stopping is open to choose a new path, not just resuming the old one. With stopping, we don't just pause and rest to resume the game. In stopping, we reflect and choose whether the old game is worth returning to, whether there is a new and different game to play, perhaps a game that is healthier, more meaningful, valuable, and loving. Pausing is getting off the bike to refresh your energy and restore your journey. Stopping is getting off the bike and choosing whether you will get back on the bike at all, and if you do, whether you will still go where you were going. Renewal provides the opening for something new to emerge, for a transformation that may shift the entire trajectory of the future. It is the space for what is new, what is possible, for resuming action in a different way, perhaps in a new direction. It is letting your soul have a voice and a choice. Without listening to our soul, we make our lives a sacrifice to efficiency and fall into resignation with our lack of choice. When we stop, we can listen to our soul, the deep calling in us to our aliveness. I really thought those words were pretty profound and really helped me think about some things that how we go through life. And so one of the ways I'm starting to think about renewal is like a phoenix, kind of coming out of the ashes. And I think that's something that might resonate with some of the things we've been experiencing in the last several months. And so one of the next thing I'd like you to think about is, if I can get there, is what are some things that bring you renewal? What are some things that you're finding that bring you back to renewal? So Mary Lou has said the silent retreat, that if other people had other things that you're doing, maybe even right now, that are bringing you renewal.
I've certainly found some of that in the Lectio Divina that Mark's been leading. Just that reflection and that sharing, and digging, letting the scripture speak to us in new ways, I think has been a renewal kind of experience.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Anyone else, some things that you've been doing during this time that are bringing you energy instead of draining you? Okay, so I will say a few things that I've been doing because I'm one of those folks that I feel guilty saying this, but this time has actually been good for me. The slowing down has just been something that I'm really seeing some real benefits for my health and just for how I'm feeling. So I've started a yoga practice where I do about 20 minutes a day. I took a meditation class, which I'd always wanted to do. I've been reading a lot of really good books. That's something that I've found that brings me lots of joy, is just having a really good book. And then always music. So those are some things for me that bring me renewal, just bring me energy. Anybody else have some other things?
I think for our family, we've shifted our dietary schedule. We're now in a European model of eating where we eat dinner usually around 8 o'clock at night. And we've had more time around the table and conversation now than we had in a long time. We've also implemented family exercise, which has been great. And so those have both been really renewing. And whenever the routine returns and we have to go to bed earlier, that's going to be tough.
Thank you, Jeff. Those are really good examples.
I've been sleeping more, even sometimes during the day, lying down with a book and falling asleep. And I find out that I think I've needed this much sleep all along and just have never gotten it. So I do wake up refreshed and ready to attack ideas or tasks in a different way.
Terrific, Judy. Thank you.
I think one thing for me has been our online worship, because I really feel more of a connection. This sounds crazy, but more of a connection than sometimes I do when we're actually worshiping in person, together at the church house. And I think it's just the idea that there are other people that I know and I love, but I can't see. But we're all doing the same thing at the same time. And that to me is a very, very renewing experience.
Thank you, Linda. Mark.
I have a similar reaction, Linda, that somehow that online Facebook live stream seems remarkably intimate and engaging. And I've come to think of it as I feel like I'm surrounded by a cloud of witnesses whom I can't see immediately, but like I know they're there. And that's an entirely different experience from being, in the room with people who I can see. It's been remarkable in my experience.
I would echo some of that. I think it's so exciting to see that people like Timba and people from South Africa and I think somebody said one day we had people from 4 continents there. And then, people will put up comments and I found it remarkable. I've also found our Faith and Light, the Pleasant View Faith and Light Zoom meetings where we're in each of the houses and then family members and people from around the country who call in or come in on Zoom. It's amazing to be able to get those people together in one location, even though they're not in the same location, but on the same wavelength.
Thank you, Nancy. Going along with Jeff's line of thought, I walk our dogs twice a day, and I would call it more of a stroll, pretty much, because they're in charge, basically. But one of the things Mark and Lizzie have been doing for the last couple months is Lizzie has become Mark's trainer, and so they take about hour-long walks every day together. And it has been the sweetest thing for them to have that time to talk to each other and that conversation, knowing that it wouldn't have happened if we were in school. She would have been doing softball. She would have been just being super, super busy, and Mark too. And so just for them to get that time, now that we have a year with Lizzie being at home before she goes to college, has really been super special. All right, so to shift gears a little bit, thinking more with renewal or maybe restorative, I would love to hear some places for you that you just, when you think about being there, it renews you.
Well, if life had been, sorry.
All right, Mary Lou, go ahead, and then Judy, I see that you want to say something too.
If life had been like it might have been, I would be on Iona right now. So that really is a place that, in some unbelievable way, just captures my heart. So hopefully next year I'll get there, but there's something about that place that just is more than renewing. It just is a thin space where you know that earth and heaven connect.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Judy.
I was going to say the Arboretum. Of course, it has its own beauty. It stands by itself and lovely walking paths and such, but it's also where Dan's bench is, his memorial bench, which has interestingly brought a number of different parts of the family together. Anne goes there frequently. Terry's daughter Anne goes there frequently, and she called me last winter and said Dan's bench is gone, and we would not have known because they didn't contact us that a tree fell on it. So that began a whole series of how do we get it back and all of that. But it's always I always have a mixed feeling when we're taking a walk and we pass by the bench and somebody's sitting on it. My immediate response is resentment. That is my bench and I want to be on it now. Why are you on it? And then when I can calm myself, I think, I'm so glad that those people enjoy the setting. We were very careful about the setting because Dan always loved the water. So we put the bench where he would always be watching the pond. And so it's good for me to have that impetus to say, all right, calm down now. This is something to share and just appreciate what they're doing.
All right,
Could-
Mark Beckman.
I'm deeply moved by that, Judith. I actually walked through the Arboretum a week or so ago, and I was a close friend of Ron Nelson, who had a stroke like 12 years ago and then was in a home for 10 years. It was just horrible, horrible. But he was the prime mover for the labyrinth that's there. And as I walked up that way, I thought, it's going to be full of weeds. It will have subsided into the earth. And instead, what I got there and discovered was that that labyrinth was beautiful, that it had been sort of spontaneously maintained. So I really think that Dan's bench will be back. I can't guarantee you a seat on it, but I think it'll be back.
No, it is back. They wouldn't allow us to buy the Giverny bench that he had originally, but I said, we'll be glad to buy it. No, it has to be the same, so we'll buy it. So I said, okay. Anyway, they did. So it is.
Stephanie, I'd be curious to see places for you.
Yeah, well, I think that Montreat comes to mind as an obvious Presbyterian spot for renewal. And there's a lot of excitement there. And now
you're renewing a lot of folks just hearing that. That's good.
Now also Massanetta Springs. So we've been there some. We've been to a couple of conferences, and last year did the pastor's respite there. Would have done that again this year if they obviously had that. But when I did one of those asking the boys questions about the coronavirus, I was touched that Isaac's first response of where you want to go when all of this is over was Massanetta Springs. And so it just means a lot to me that that's becoming such a holy and sacred space for them.
Thanks, Stephanie. And Teresa, haven't heard anything from you. Anything you could add for us?
Well, I would say at this particular juncture in my life, where everything is so very new, my backyard is quite lovely, and it's a place where I can be some days of the week completely by myself and other days not quite so much with other little people, but it's, you know, I can look at the weeds and go, it's not my problem today. There's always tomorrow and the rest of the time between now and eternity with no job to go to. So I'm finding, you know, a real joy in sitting in the backyard and looking at the flowers and the weeds and the grandkids and knowing that this is it.
Thank you, Teresa.
You're welcome.
Couple spots for me that come to mind is every summer we go to Shepherdstown, West Virginia, and stay at this place called the Bavarian Inn. So if you can't be in Germany, we go there, and they have a fantastic pool that it's an infinity pool that looks like you're going into the Potomac River, and our entire family just loves going there, and so it's something that we all look forward to every year. I think we found out today that we get to go to Rehoboth Beach the end of next month, and that's another place that has always been very special to our family. And then finally for me, I heard somebody had a clock going off in the back. Several years ago, we were in Garmisch, Germany, and we had this place that I would go out on the balcony, and there was a clock tower of the church that would go off at 9 in the morning and 6 at night every day. And I would sit on the balcony and I would listen to the clock. They would have some bells. And then I would look up and I would see the Zugspitze, which is the biggest, tallest mountain in Germany. And it just took my breath away every day. So that's my happy place. So when I have it in my head, I can have that picture in my head and that sound, and it was just, yeah, it just brings me just back to it. Nancy, thank you.
The places that pop in my mind are Massanetta, Montreat, and Iona. I think when I went to Iona, I was just really, really burned out from my working with the emotionally disturbed kids at DeJarnet's, and 3 years of really intense work. And I remember sitting on the cliffs there and just the thin place that feels like God is everywhere. It's amazing. Amazing place to be. But Massanetta's always been like that too for me. Growing up, getting to Massanetta every summer, having the friends that I get to see working there, it's just kind of has always felt like a sacred place too. And it's nice to have a sacred place that close to get to. And then I'd also agree with Teresa that sometimes my garden is just the most wonderful place to sit there and look at the flowers and take a deep breath and try to ignore the weeds for a little while.
Thank you, Nancy. So it sounds like some of the themes I'm hearing over and over again is a lot with nature, and also that it doesn't have to be a faraway place. It can be someplace close by, which is something good for us to remember. I know that when we can have a retreat again at Massanetta Springs, my Lizzie and I will be very happy. Lizzie, it's one of her special places. She just loves Massanetta Springs too. Just for the retreats in specific. She did not like camp, but she really, really likes the retreats. And so I think that's all I had for us to think about. So in thinking about how this connects to Myrtle, I think we found some themes of things that are important. And also we'd already talked about planning some kind of service for healing and wholeness. It kind of goes with renewal also. And so kind of thinking about all of these and how this can go into the Myrtle collaboration also. So Mark, I think you're gonna finish us off.
That sounds kind of ominous, finish us off, but I'll try to close. Yeah, I will indeed. I do think it's important to know that the check is not any longer in the mail. The check is actually in the file cabinet in the office. And so we can look forward to ways that we can use those kinds of resources to enhance what it is we do. One of the things that I'm struck with is how much our sense of who we are and what we need to do hasn't been changed in the last few months, but has been clarified. And that's, I think, one of the rewards I've felt in the last few months. So that, to go back to that idea from Paul Tillich, suffering introduces you to yourself. Did you know who you were 2 months ago? I heard a couple of people saying, yeah, but you know, I was kind of ignoring it. I was too busy for it. And reminds you that you're not the person you thought you were, which you could take as I'm nowhere near as strong as I thought I was, or I have resources that I was not aware I had. And I think that's the thing that we need to emphasize. The way the church has responded to New Bridges, for example, has been deeply moving to me. So I'd like to offer a prayer to close us with gratitude to the Creator, who calls us into being, has called us into being from the very beginning of time, and has allowed us to be part of God's creation so that we can more fully comprehend. We beseech that Creator so that we can more fully comprehend the gift of life and to be better stewards of God's creation, and especially to those who currently are suffering far more deeply than we are. Help us, Lord, to move towards them, to support them, to understand them, to value them, to speak for them. For, back to Tillich, suffering introduces us to ourselves and reminds us that we are not the people we thought we were. So, Lord, please lead us into tomorrow and into further discussions, and be with us even when we are distracted. So thank you all. I love you all, and good night and good luck.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.